have is the panel on Why Are Men in the Women's Bathrooms? Great title. But first, I want to go ahead and invite our panelists. We have with us today Senator Lois Kolkhorst. And yes, please give her a round of applause. And Kelly Fedoruk from Alliance for Men and Freedom, if y'all want to go ahead and come up to the stage, that'd be great. Let's give them another round of applause. All right. I guess I didn't get the blue memo here. Like, it blends really well. Well, I feel a little selfish because these two women are some of my most favorite people and really heroes to me because they've taken such a stand for Texas values, for women, and for family values that we believe in. So it's an honor to be up here with both of y'all, and I want to introduce y'all. Kelly Fedoruk serves as legal counsel with Alliance Defending Freedom, where she's a member of the Alliance Advancement Team. Fedoruk has defended religious liberty, marriage, and family against legal attacks. She's authored federal and state legislation and advised Congress, governors, state attorney generals, and she has testified before many state legislators across the country on the importance of safeguarding religious freedom, free speech, the sanctity of life, and the right to privacy. And I will tell you personally that Kelly is someone that I feel like you're on call. We're able to call and get legal advice from Kelly. She goes all across the nation working on these issues with a great team. And so it's an honor to have you here, Kelly. And then I also want to introduce Senator Lois Kolkhorst. Senator Lois Kolkhorst is, I didn't know this about you, you are a fifth-generation Texan with ancestral roots dating to the Texas War of Independence. That's a heritage right there. And she is a graduate of TCU. Do you have any? Go for it. Okay, where she played collegiate golf. And she proudly represents Senate District 8, which I didn't realize how big. Senate District 18, which spans 21 counties and nearly 1 million constituents. So she's got quite a big district. She's the chair of Committee on Administration and is a member of the Senate Finance Committee, Health and Human Services Committee, and the Senate Transportation Committee. She's married to her high school sweetheart, Jim, and together they have 2 children, Lois, Kate, and Jake. And I didn't know this about you either. Your hobbies include hunting, fishing, and gardening. That's pretty neat. And of course, you'll remember Senator Kolkhorst's heroic stand in filing the Privacy Act and standing for that issue, which we want to dive into today on this panel. And I'm going to give a little bit of background, and then we'll go into some questions for y'all. So many of you have heard about the Privacy Act. The media like to dub it the bathroom bill. But we need to remember where the history started. And many people around the nation are aware of the Obama administration's letter directing schools to allow children who identify as the opposite sex into showers, locker rooms, and bathrooms, as well as hotel rooms. What many people don't know is that actually, that fight actually started weeks before in Texas, when a superintendent in Fort Worth issued policies that not only would have allowed boys and girls showers, locker rooms, and bathrooms, but it also would have prevented parents from knowing if their child was struggling with their gender identity. That's a major violation of our Texas Education Code when it comes to parental rights. Parents have the right to know everything that's happening, especially with something as delicate and deep as a gender identity issue. Parents need to be able to know if their child is struggling with those issues. And that superintendent, without a vote from the school board and without any input from parents, pushed through that policy. Thankfully, those parents were able to stand up, and those policies were eventually rescinded. But what we saw was first Fort Worth, then Washington, D.C. And if any of you know some of the work we do, whenever I'm speaking, I try to remind people what happens in Texas impacts the rest of the nation. We are the front lines on the family values issues. And if we can advance that line, I'm telling you, in DC, it advances it for the rest of the nation. But if we ever were to retreat, it would cause a massive, massive retreat on the rest of the nation. So that's why it's so important that we continue to stand for these issues and advance those issues. So you saw where Fort Worth, their policies were pushed through and then rescinded after parents stood up. We saw what happened with the Obama administration, and thankfully the Trump administration took back that letter. We were thankful to see that. But, yes, that was very important. The problem is that these issues are still happening in Texas school districts. Senator Kolkhorst did a phenomenal job with a very well-written bill that ensured that when it came to what the government has jurisdiction over, government schools, public buildings, you go based on what's on your birth certificate, very common sense. Private business can do whatever they want. If Target wants to lose millions of dollars and have 1.5 million Americans boycott them, they can do that. But when it comes to protecting privacy and dignity, in our public schools and government buildings, you go to the facility based on your birth certificate. Many of you know the drama that happened. The Senate passed it 3 times, I think, language on the privacy issue. When you take 3 times with the special session. It all kind of runs together, I think. So past that, unfortunately, Speaker Strauss and Representative Cook stopped that bill from going through, even though there were 80 co-authors on the House version of the bill, which you only need 75 votes. 80 co-authors wanting to get something through. And we'll talk a little bit more about where things are moving forward. But Senator Kolkhorst, I think it's important for people to realize, Simon Sinek, a motivational speaker, talks about, we can articulate what we do, but we need to say why we do what we do. And your story was so compelling, and I want to make sure that you get that opportunity to tell why did you file the Privacy Act?
Well, thank you so much, Nicole and Kelly and Jonathan and all of you that are involved in Texas Values. Let me start by saying that. Thank you for what you do, being a voice of, a basis of what our values are in Texas and in our nation. I believe what our Constitution was written from, the Judeo-Christian values that we see reflected by our founders, and thank you very much for that. So why did I file that bill? It was a journey, I've shared some of those stories. I know that we have media in the room it's been hard to get that message out, but I originally, I'll just tell y'all, it had to be a God thing that moved me to first file this bill. You don't, take on big issues like this unless you were moved to do so. And it was really very spiritual for me, and it was the greatest faith walk I have ever taken in my life. I'm a different person today. Now, some could say that you were persecuted, you were ridiculed, you were called all those names. It was a part of the journey, and it was a walk that I needed to take for Texas. And it was very tough on my family, very difficult. Lois Gay was a senior in high school, and Jake in 8th grade, and there was nothing easy about that in a small town. But, very personal note for me. When I was very young, and you ladies know this, we didn't have a lot of sports outlets. We didn't have, there weren't a lot of sports for girls. And I was blessed by the Lord to have really good hand-eye coordination, and I was a pretty good athlete. And I wanted to play baseball. And you couldn't play baseball. There was no softball league in Brenham. Title IX actually passed, and Title IX gave access to girls playing lots of sports. It kind of leveled the playing field for us women in a lot of regards, but for me it most impacted me and my athletic abilities. And I'll never forget that the day that was passed and signed into law, the local radio station called our house because Mr. Whitehead had watched me play sports. I'd play cup baseball behind my brother's baseball games, and he just thought I was a great athlete. So he called and wanted to talk to little Lois. I'm a third generation Lois, and said, I want to talk to little Lois about if she's going to play Little League with the boys. So I gave this interview, and I was like 6 or 7 years old, and I had fun. My mother looked at my dad, who was a prominent dentist in Brenham, and she said, Rob Day, my girl is not going to play baseball with the boys, and you are going to create a softball league in Washington County. And he and Walter Schwartz, who served in the legislature actually, at the time was president of Glenn College, they formed a softball league for me to be able to play sports. And Walter had a daughter who was a pretty good athlete too. So when you start to see certain trends, in the Obama letter that was written on May the 13th of 2016, I want to say that's one of the last and very late gifts that he gave to this country through the Department of Justice and the Department of Education. You really need to Google that letter, and all you have to do to get that letter is do Dear Colleague Obama letter, and it'll pop up. And the first page is kind of an interpretation page, just throw that one away, and read the next 3 or 4 pages. It's a real short read, but it goes in to talk about gender identity, and it's a letter to the schools of America to say that you no longer have any power when it comes to this, and you have to let someone who has identified in a different gender to allow them into the restrooms, the locker rooms, the showers, the dressing rooms, athletics, overnight stays, on field trips. It goes into all of those. And so what really resonated with me was athletics and rewriting Title IX. Rewriting Title IX without a vote. I have been quoted, not really, but media never quotes me on this stuff. I have said many times, this is the women's rights issue of our time. Go to Connecticut and see that last year, someone that declared themselves to be a female won the 100 and 200 meter sprints. And then this year in Connecticut, the first and second place was won by a male that now identifies as a female in the 100 and 200 meter sprints. Now to correlate that, if they had participated in the sprints in the boys division, they would have finished in last place. And so me, who I went on because of Title IX, I went on to be a college athlete. And it was, for me, a great accomplishment. My dad had been killed in a car wreck when I was 16, and the odds were really against me at the time. I wanted to be a pro golfer, but when I graduated from college, I just didn't have the money. You don't get drafted into the LPGA. You actually get rewarded on your play. And Jimmy and I were just married and very, very poor. It was a tough time, and I really did not have the courage to do it at the time. And I look back, and I always say this, and I want to say this to all of you. Even when I decided to run for office, one of the things that you have to ask yourself is that, are you a failure if you try to do something that you believe is right and good? And maybe you don't get it across the goal line. We're in football season now, so I use the goal line. Or are you more of a failure because you never tried? Because you sat in silence and you didn't do it because of your fear? Well, I didn't try to be a pro golfer because I feared. I feared. And let me tell you, fear is a liar. So when I filed this bill, and I told no one, when I talked to the lieutenant governor who had approached me about carrying this bill, I agreed to it, but I told no one for a long time. Not even Jimmy Colhorse, who's my best friend. And I will never forget the day that I told him. I like to say we have our board meetings in the kitchen over coffee. And I told him, he goes, oh, wait, no, I'm not sure we want to do that, babe. It's pretty cute. He's like, how far down the road are we on this thing? Because I'm not sure you want to do this. when I told my chief of staff, he cleverly, and he's been my chief of staff for 18 years and is from the district, he goes, all right. And he took a deep breath and says, you know that you are automatically on Texas Monthly's worst 10. Automatically. And I told Archie Ratliff that the first day of session. I looked at him and said, hey, you're only looking for 9 now. And I was right. I was absolutely right on that. And so the journey and why you do certain things and why you push that envelope, why you step into, and you know, we have a lot of social issues, being pro-life, we have a lot of issues. But as my chief of staff and my husband will tell you, I took on the granddaddy of them all, using a term that is sometimes associated with the Rose Bowl. I'm going to stay with football theme tonight. And so, why? I really believed in my heart that this was an issue that we needed to look at as a state and not let this be settled school district by school district, town by town. I am the senator for 70 ISDs. I span 21 counties. You can put Connecticut and Rhode Island in Senate District 18. When I was campaigning for Cruz in South Carolina, I looked at one of the staff that was with me, and I said, shoot, I could be the governor of South Carolina. This is nothing to this. I crisscross that state. That's nothing compared to Senate District 18. But I represent a lot of rural school districts. I represent 2 very large schools, 3 really large school districts. But I know those school districts well. And you know what? They were facing, the larger school districts were facing pretty tough decisions, but many of them were handling this in a really good manner. But the Obama letter started something that was forced down upon them that said, dear colleague, this is how you're going to handle it, and if you don't, we're going to withhold your federal monies. Now that's not right. You look at the HERO, okay? So HERO had happened in November of 2015, and it was defeated in Houston, Texas, by a really large margin. The HERO was the bathrooms issue. Many of you, Texas Values was involved. So if you look at this kind of timeline, I'll just start there. You can start before that, but November of 2015, the largest city in Texas votes to say, no, we're going to keep with men are in men's bathroom and women are in women's bathrooms. And many of you, of the preachers, thank you for what you did, taking your courage at the pulpit. And I apologize for the former mayor of Houston subpoena your sermons. Are you kidding me? And we've passed a bill for that. But I'm going to end it with this. November. Then you fast forward to April, and you have the Fort Worth ISD and what they were doing. Then you come out in May of that same year, and you have the Dear Colleague letter. Then you have Dripping Springs. And the march was great. I mean, it was just moving, and it was one domino after another without parent involvement. And I also saw what it was doing to those communities. And I told a group of superintendents the other day, I said, it was better for me to take those arrows than to watch these communities being split and splintered and pitting neighbor against neighbor. Let the state do this, and let the state set those parameters so that you don't have to. And so that's a very long answer to a complicated question.
But we so appreciate you sharing that story, and that's a story worth being told. I mean, it was personal for you, but you were looking at what was happening in your own community and knowing what was happening to girls across the state. And I want to take it, you did an excellent job explaining that timeline with what happened with HERO, what's happening in Texas. But I want to give us an even higher view, a 30,000-foot view of what's actually happening across the nation. on this issue. It's an ongoing issue. So Kelly, can you speak to that? You've been working on this issue for a while. So tell us what's happening across the nation, because it's not just happening in Texas.
Well, first of all, to Texas Values, to Nicole Jonathan, thank you for having me be here. Alliance Defending Freedom really values the partnership that we have with you guys. And I also just want to take another moment and give a shout out to Senator Kolkhorst. I work on these issues all across the country. I've worked with thousands of lawmakers and allies. I don't think I've seen someone in the legislature who handled an issue with the compassion and with the grace and the poise and the fearlessness which Senator Kolkhorst did time and time again, even in dark times. So can you just join me? Easy being a public face on this issue, and yet this issue is so vital, as she articulated so many times, to our children, to our young girls, and to everyone. And that's really bringing it to the more of a national perspective. We are having a national conversation on what does privacy mean? What does definition of sex mean? Does it include gender identity or sexual orientation? And the answers to these questions have significant consequences for everyone, no matter who you are, no matter what you're struggling with, no matter what your gender identity might be. At the end of the day, each and every one of us has that right to privacy, the right to be in a state of undress without members of the opposite biological sex viewing us. This is very fundamental to who we are. And as this conversation has unfolded, you heard from Senator Kolkhorst how we saw what happened from the top down of the Obama administration. Thankfully, the Trump administration did repeal that guidance letter. But as Senator Kolkhorst mentioned, this has taken root across our country, where we're seeing it significantly in schools. Public schools are changing their policies without parental notification, without parental involvement. So kids will come to school one day and find out that now if you identify as a member of the opposite sex, so if I identify as a male, I then can go into the boys' locker room, I can go into the boys' bathroom, I can play on the boys' sports team simply based on how I identify. And there's some real ramifications for that. So a couple of things to put on y'all's radar of what's coming up. First and foremost, there are currently 3 cases pending before the United States Supreme Court asking the question of what does sex mean under Title VII. Title VII is a federal law that ensures discrimination doesn't take place in areas of employment. There's a circuit split in 2 of the cases asking, does sex under Title VII include sexual orientation? Because the cases are alleging that if you discriminate based on someone's sexual orientation, you're also discriminating based on sex, and therefore you have violated Title VII. The 3rd case asks a similar question, but it involves whether or not sex under Title VII includes gender identity. And this is involving a case out of Michigan, Harris Funeral Home, where there was a gentleman that worked there for about 10 years and worked with those people who were having their loved ones pass away in the process. And they had specific dress codes for this. It's a faith-based run ministry or a funeral home. And this gentleman transitioned to a woman, wanted to wear dresses to work, and so we have issues there. He's filed a complaint against the funeral home for discrimination based on gender identity. So this case is also pending at the U.S. Supreme Court. So more than likely, I would expect the court to take 1 or more of these cases to really answer once and for all, what did Congress mean when they passed Title VII, and this will have implications for Title IX. What did they mean when they passed that? Did they mean sex, meaning male and female, or did they mean more than that? And if they didn't mean more than that, which I would argue that they did not, then it's not the role of the judiciary to redefine Title VII and Title IX, that's the role of Congress. Congress has that right, not the judiciary. And so that's what's really pending right now on that issue, but I think that will have ramifications for the growing conversation we're seeing within schools and across the states and at the local level of what that means. And so just a couple quick examples of where we're seeing this play out. obviously is playing out here in Texas. Alliance Defending Freedom has a case in Pennsylvania with the Boyertown School District. We currently, we're up to the Third Circuit. The Third Circuit ruled against the students who filed a lawsuit in that case, saying that, look, when the school changes its policies, this violates the students' privacy rights, that every child has that right to privacy, and this violates that. So we're looking at next options, and it's likely that we could appeal that to the U.S. Supreme Court. So at issue there is, multiple students who are very concerned that if they go into their locker room, they already have and will continue to have members of the opposite sex present there. We're also seeing an increase in when schools change these policies and other ramifications, including even assault, which is what Title IX was intended in part to prevent. When we allow young men and young girls to be intermixed in these very intimate facilities, unfortunately sometimes sad things do happen. And we currently are in the process of filing a complaint on behalf of a young girl. Very, very young, elementary school. Her school changed the policy, and unfortunately she experienced sexual assault by an older student, male student, who professed a female identity, who was trying to gain access in that restroom. So significant issues, whether in areas of sexual assault, which we're already seeing so much right now in the media, as well as just, even if there's nothing physical happens, it's still an affront to one's privacy and dignity to experience that. So that, I think, brings us to, what do we do about it? And I think that's a big question. But as Senator Kolkhorst said, I think it's really vital for the state to be able to set that baseline of privacy to dictate to the schools, hey, here's what you do. You respect the privacy rights of every child, even those who are struggling with a gender identity. Everyone deserves privacy. So you find ways to accommodate that in a way that no child is left behind. No matter how you identify, you're all protected. And that's vital that we do that and continue to do that. So I think the question that we're going to have to explore as we move forward in states across this country is, how do we set that baseline to ensure that local school districts aren't changing policies, hurting our children, and then not even informing parents about it.
Thank you so much, Kelly, for that. That information of being able to see what's happening across the nation. It's not just happening in Texas, but at the same time, like you said, if our state can choose that common sense baseline approach, that's not only going to impact our state and what's happening in your local community, but it's also going to can set a precedence for what happens for the rest of the nation. And Senator Kolkhorst, briefly, because I know we want to talk about the next Supreme Court case that's coming up, but what do you see moving forward? What do we need to be focusing on moving forward on this issue?
Well, one of the things that I want to say is just in filing SB 6 and then SB 3 during the special session, I think brought a great amount of attention to the issue. And in that, there is a huge victory for all of us. I think that school districts are much more aware that this could come to their school district. I think that people are more engaged. It brought a light to the Obama Dear Colleague letter that, guys, when you can actually go and study, and I know y'all have done some of this, but Kelly mentioned the sexual assaults that, it kind of gave freedom to some sexual predators that could then just go into the restroom and not stop. And if you don't think that God's talking to you all the time, you're just not listening. I'm in the restroom in the Capitol, and a lady walks up to me and she says, "I just want to thank you so much for your courage." And I was thinking, because I had less of that and more of the other. And I said, "Well, yes, ma'am, thank you. Are you talking about the Privacy Act?" And she goes, "Yes, in this very restroom. I was here a couple of weeks ago, and there was a man in here, and he was just here." And I looked at him, and I went outside, and I looked at the door. Maybe I went to the wrong one. I went back in, and he's there. And she said, I felt so violated, and I was scared. So she said, I ran out, and I went to go get a DPS officer, and the DPS officer says, "We can't do anything about that." And so, I had many instances of that happened to us. And so, moving forward, one of the things is that I think we really need to focus on, empowering school districts and not allowing them to do something in executive session that affects all children. I think that communities, being involved in their school district, I had a bill that I passed last session that really worked on school board governance and giving school boards more ability to really look into school performance and things like that, and empowering our school boards because they are our voice from the voters. And I think that we just have to continue to discuss this huge issue. The Supreme Court hopefully is going to weigh in and give some voice on direction in Title VII and in Title IX. Ultimately, I think all of that is vital to where we're going, because it's not just a Texas thing, it's a U.S. issue. I challenge all of us to say, if I can change my gender, historically underutilized businesses are protected for minorities and women. So what keeps a man from declaring that they're a female and being a hub? There are lots of lines that eventually become very blurred on this. Sensitivity, I want to hit on that. I know that we're going to wrap this up, but sensitivity. One of the things that I tried to do the entire session was meet with parents of both sides of this issue and to try to show the utmost respect for people that are struggling with gender identity. I mean, our teens face a lot. I'm raising 2 of them right now, right? And, with all of that, I did not see reciprocity. And there's a question of when are the rights of the majority violated by the rights of a very small minority? That is the real question, especially in making exceptions. And so, in being kind and understanding that there are challenges in this world. So with that, I'll hand it back to you.
Thank you so much, Senator Kolkhorst, for your stand. And I will say, I remember watching you on the Senate floor, and you addressed this issue with such compassion, such sensitivity. We realize, even those on the other side, they are human beings, created in the image of God, even when they're struggling. So we do need to have that utmost respect. So I appreciate the stand you took, and just personal. If y'all saw, her outfit was on point that day too, just personal. But just so appreciate the stand that she took on that issue, as Kelly said. And I know that we're going to have to wrap up, but I did want to ask Kelly this one last question, because this is such a soon update. I mean, things happen fast with the Jack Phillips case, and you're going, how are we switching from privacy to religious freedom? Well, as Senator Kolkhorst talked about, what about those who are business owners who are being attacked with this issue, and you want to see a way that a business owner is being attacked because of his religious beliefs on gender identity. Look at the case of Jack Phillips. Yes, he went all the way up to the Supreme Court. We're so thankful the Supreme Court ruled in favor of him, but he is actually now back in court. Kelly, can you tell us why?
Sure. So, as most of you know, Masterpiece Cake Shop came down June 4th, the 7-2 victory from the U.S. Supreme Court, saying that hostility has no place in a pluralistic society, that the government must respect everyone's viewpoints and not discriminate against those it might disagree with. So that was a wonderful victory, but for Jack, didn't get to relish that as long as he would have liked. Back around a year ago, the day the United States Supreme Court granted review of his case, a call came into his shop asking him to design a cake for this, that was pink on the inside and blue on the outside, that was to celebrate this attorney and his gentleman's sex change. And because that was not a cake that Jack serves everyone who walks into his shop, doesn't matter who they are, there's just certain events and certain messages that he can't can't custom create or design. So he declined that request. Subsequently, other requests came in that he thought seemed similar from the same person, that involved satanic images and these types of things. So it sort of seemed like a setup. Nevertheless, a complaint was filed with the Colorado Human Rights Commission, the same commission that was targeting him before that the U.S. Supreme Court just called out for their hostility toward Jack. So then fast forward to June, a couple weeks after we got the U.S. Supreme Court decision in his case, the commission went ahead and found probable cause to proceed that Jack had in fact discriminated against this gentleman based on gender identity. So he's back in court. Alliance Defending Gender Freedom, we just filed a case in federal court on his behalf against the Colorado Human Rights Commission in the state of Colorado, saying that you really can't violate his fundamental freedoms this way. The Supreme Court just told you couldn't do this. So please keep that case and Jack and his family in your thoughts and in your prayers, because there's really a lot at stake, not just for Jack, but for all of us, because everyone has that freedom to peacefully live consistent with their convictions, and the government needs to protect that, no matter how much it might disagree with that, because ultimately we all stand and we all fall together when it comes to freedom.
Absolutely. Thank you for all these work.
I cannot even imagine, after winning and now back in court. Can I add something to this? When we talk about the media, and you can't ever, sometimes get through all of that, and, the gatekeepers, you have to do some of your own research. I ask at the end of the session to have research done on how many stories were written on the privacy, quote-unquote, bathroom bill versus an issue like sexual assault on our college campuses. 1 in 4 girls will be sexually assaulted on our college campuses. That is a statistic. We had a bill on that failed to pass, but it's a huge issue. Y'all all know about Baylor and the issues that they had with their athletic department. Every college campus struggles with this issue. It is a Title IX issue. It is a women's rights issue. 100 stories were written on that issue. Big issue. 1 in 4 girls will be raped on our college campuses, statistically speaking. How many were written on the bathroom bill between January and the end of May? 600. That's just print media. 600. Not one written from the perspective of what we're talking about today. Not one. So you can see how difficult it is to get the message out. From the bottom of my heart, thank you for having courage to come and meet and talk about what Texas values are, what we believe in, and not being silenced. The only way that you fail is to not try. So with that, thank you.
Thank you so much. One thing I will say, though, on a positive note, and Senator Coolidge, you said it so well, is reminding people about how important it is to speak up on this issue. You need to be talking to your friends, you need to be talking to your family members about this. This is a very important issue. I will say on a little bit more positive note, though, the numbers. If you'll look back at the recent GOP, the Republican primary that happened in March, there were 11 propositions. One of those propositions was, do you believe that the government should protect the privacy and dignity of women and girls by not allowing men into women's restrooms? Phrased this, similar to that. That actually got over 90% of Republican voters voting in favor of it. It won in every single county. The lowest ranking poll that was done, or it was an actual poll, a real poll, an election on that issue, Travis County, it was at 75%, the most liberal county in the state. 75% of GOP voters in Travis County voted in favor of protecting privacy. It won in every county, and we've seen it put on the GOP legislative priorities list for the 2019 legislative session. So the momentum of those who are at least willing to go to the ballot box are willing to say we want to protect privacy. Not only that, out of the 11 propositions, it ranked number 3, even higher than repealing Obamacare. That's how strong this issue is. But we can't just, put our vote on the ballot box, and that's critical. But we also have to speak up and be willing to support those who are. So ladies, thank you so much for all you're doing and for being on this panel.